The night was quiet across the alien capital, too quiet for a city that never slept. Towering crystal towers glowed faint blue, and the air shimmered with the hum of energy shields. But deep inside the royal palace, silence broke into panic. The queen of the Xylaris race stood tall, her golden eyes burning like fire. She was known as the Fierce Queen, a ruler feared across the galaxy. Her voice could command armies. Her hand could destroy entire fleets. But tonight, that same voice cracked with terror. Her daughters, 3 young princesses of her bloodline, were missing. Guards ran through the palace halls, searching every chamber. The nursery was empty. The gardens were quiet. Even the hidden tunnels beneath the palace showed no sign of the girls. The queen's roar shook the walls. "Find them! Search every shadow! Bring me my daughters or bring me your heads." Her soldiers bowed, but fear filled their eyes. They knew what her wrath could do. Still, the trail was strange. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken doors, no shattered glass. It was as if the princesses had simply vanished into thin air. Across the galaxy, news spread like wildfire. The daughters of the Fierce Queen had disappeared. Some whispered of kidnapping. Others feared prophecy, because an old legend spoke of royal blood being tied to humans. But no one dared say it out loud in front of her. The queen's enemies waited in silence. If the heirs were gone forever, her throne would weaken. Warlords and rival clans already sharpened their blades, ready to strike. But far away on the edge of the galaxy, a human farmer named Elias was living a quiet life. His home was nothing but a small outpost made of wood and metal scraps. His fields grew simple crops, and his nights were spent under the cold stars. That night, Elias woke with a start. Something was wrong. He felt pressure on his chest as if a heavy blanket had been thrown over him. His hand reached down, and instead of cloth, he felt warm skin. His eyes flew open. 2 small figures were curled up on him, sleeping soundly. Their skin shimmered faint silver, glowing faintly like starlight. Their hair, long and flowing, sparkled with colors that shifted between white and violet. Their small hands clutched his shirt tightly, as if they had been running from nightmares. For a moment, Elias froze. His mind raced. Were they alien children? How had they entered his cabin, which was locked tight? The girls stirred. One opened her glowing eyes, golden like burning suns. She looked up at him, and instead of fear, she whispered something soft in a language he did not understand. The other pressed closer, hiding her face in his chest. Elias's heart pounded. He had seen many alien traders at the outpost, but never children like these. And never this close. He knew the galaxy was filled with powerful species, but he also knew danger followed them. Before he could move, he heard it, the deep rumble of engines in the sky. Ships. Searchlights cut through the clouds, sweeping across the valley near his farm. His stomach twisted. Whoever these girls were, someone was looking for them. The girls clung tighter, shivering as if they already knew the danger above. Elias's first thought was simple. Throw them out, close the door, and stay out of trouble. That was what any sane man would do. But something inside him stopped his hand. Maybe it was the way they shook, or the way their glowing eyes looked so helpless. They weren't invaders. They weren't soldiers. They were children, lost, scared and hiding on his chest like he was the only safe place in the galaxy. Elias cursed under his breath. Trouble had landed in his lap, whether he liked it or not. The engines grew louder. The ships were coming closer, and the lights began to sweep over his small cabin. If he was caught with these girls, whoever hunted them would not forgive him. The eldest of the 2 touched his face with her tiny hand. Her lips trembled, but her eyes begged him not to give them away. Elias didn't understand her words, but he understood her meaning. And that was the moment he realized. His quiet life was over. He had no idea who these children were, or what storm was about to follow. But he knew one thing with certainty. If he gave them up, he would never forgive himself. The ships roared overhead. The walls of his cabin shook. Soldiers might already be landing outside. Elias took a deep breath, pulled the blanket over the girls, and whispered, "Stay quiet. No matter what happens, don't make a sound." He stood, heart racing, and reached for the old rifle mounted on his wall. He didn't know what kind of war he was about to step into, but he knew danger was here and outside. In the endless dark sky, the Queen's army spread like fire. searching for the daughters she would burn worlds to reclaim. Cliffhanger. And here they were, curled up on a human's chest. The sound of heavy engines still thundered outside. Elias held his breath as the walls of his cabin trembled. Searchlights swept across his window, glowing like knives in the night. The two alien girls under his blanket didn't move. They curled tighter against his chest, as if they trusted him more than the sky. Elias cursed silently. "Why me, out of all the places in this galaxy? Why here?" He peered through the wooden cracks of his cabin wall. 3 black ships hovered above his farm. Their armored sides bore the sigil of a blazing crown. Even as a simple farmer, Elias knew that mark. It belonged to the fierce alien queen herself, the most feared ruler in the galaxy. His blood went cold. If the queen's army was here, then these children were not ordinary alien girls. They were royal. They were the missing daughters. Elias's hands shook as he lowered the curtain. If the soldiers found them in his home, he was finished. They wouldn't ask questions. They wouldn't show mercy. He would be executed on the spot, his farm burned to ash. But when he looked back at the girls, his chest tightened. Their small hands clung to his shirt, their glowing eyes wide with silent fear. He could have pushed them away. He could have shouted for the soldiers and saved his own life. But something deep inside him refused. "All right," he whispered, forcing calm into his voice. "If you stay quiet, maybe we'll get through this." The eldest tilted her head, not understanding his words but catching the tone. She pressed her hand over her little sister's mouth to keep her from whimpering. For a moment, Elias almost laughed. These children had more courage than most grown soldiers. A sudden pounding shook his door. "Open up!" A voice barked in alien tongue, deep and metallic. The translation device in Elias's wristband flickered to life. "By order of the Queen, every dwelling will be searched. Open now." Elias's heart hammered in his chest. He grabbed his old rifle from the wall, though he knew it was useless against alien armor. He wasn't trying to fight. He was trying to buy time. The pounding grew louder. "Bang, bang, bang, last warning, human," the soldier shouted. Elias forced his face into a mask of calm and opened the door. Cold night air rushed inside as 3 armored figures stormed in, their weapons glowing red. Their helmets gleamed like polished obsidian, and their eyes scanned everything. One soldier shoved him back with a metal gauntlet. "You live alone?" the soldier asked. "Yes," Elias lied quickly, steadying his breath. "Just me. Haven't seen anyone in weeks." The soldiers moved around the cabin, scanning with their wrist devices. Beams of blue light swept across the floor, the walls, even the old wooden table. Each second felt like an eternity. Elias stood frozen, praying the girls under the blanket stayed silent. One soldier paused near the bed. The blanket moved ever so slightly. Elias's stomach sank. The soldier reached down, hand closing on the fabric. Elias's body moved before his mind did. "Careful with that," he snapped, stepping forward. "That blanket's lined with thermal coils. Old model, unstable. You tear it open, it could fry your scanner or your face." The soldier stopped, helmet tilting toward Elias. For a moment, silence stretched thin, ready to snap. Then the soldier scoffed. "Humans and their junk." He let go of the blanket and turned away. Elias forced a smirk, but inside he was drowning in relief. The soldiers finished their sweep. Finding nothing, they marched back to the door. The leader gave Elias one last look. "If you see or hear anything unusual, report it. If you lie to us, human, the Queen will burn your world." Elias nodded stiffly. "Understood." The soldiers left, their boots thudding heavy against the dirt outside. The ships lifted off, engines howling, and disappeared into the night sky. Elias closed the door, bolted it, and slumped against the wall, gasping for air. His hands shook violently, but when he looked back at the bed, he froze again. The 2 girls peeked out from under the blanket. The younger's eyes shimmered with tears, but the elder gave a small nod, as if to say, "Thank you." Elias sat heavily on the chair, rubbing his face. "What am I doing?" he muttered. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was a farmer who barely managed to feed himself. And yet, he had just lied to the deadliest army in the galaxy, for 2 children he didn't even know. The elder girl crawled out from the blanket and slowly approached him. Her small hand touched his arm. For the first time, Elias noticed the faint glowing markings running along her skin, delicate patterns that pulsed like living light. Royal blood. She pointed at the door, then pressed her glowing hand against her chest, whispering a single word in her language. Elias didn't understand the sound, but the meaning was clear. She was saying safe. He swallowed hard. He had no idea what storm he was standing in. But one thing was clear. These girls had chosen him, and somewhere across the galaxy their mother, the fierce queen, would stop at nothing to get them back. Cliffhanger, Elias whispered to himself. I've just made the most dangerous choice of my life. The queen's throne room was filled with fire and fear. Soldiers stood in rows, not daring to lift their heads. The air itself trembled as the fierce alien queen paced before them, her golden eyes blazing. Her daughters were still missing. Hours had passed and her rage had only grown sharper. 3 heirs to the throne, she hissed, her voice echoing through the chamber. 3 lights of my blood. And you let them vanish under your watch? None of the soldiers answered. They knew silence was safer than excuses. The queen raised her hand. Energy flared from her palm, and one unlucky commander was lifted into the air, choking as invisible power crushed his throat. She let his body fall with a crash. Bring them back, she roared, or I will drown this galaxy in fire. Across the galaxy, her fleet spread like a storm, burning villages and searching every world. The legend of the missing daughters grew louder. Enemies whispered, waiting for the moment the queen's grief made her reckless. But far away, the 2 lost princesses were sitting quietly in a human's cabin. Elias had not slept since the soldiers left. He sat at his table staring at the strange children who had turned his life upside down. The younger one curled up on the bed, asleep again, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dark. The elder sat beside him, watching with sharp golden eyes far too wise for her age. Elias rubbed his face. I don't even know your names. The girl tilted her head. Slowly, she pressed her hand to her chest and said, Liara. He repeated it, awkward on his tongue. Liara. Then she pointed at her sister. Ceres, Elias nodded. Liara and Ceres, all right. I guess we've been introduced. Liara touched her glowing markings and then pointed to him. Her voice carried a question he couldn't understand, but her expression said it all. Who are you? I'm Elias, he said quietly. Just a farmer, just nobody. Her small brow furrowed, as if she didn't believe him. Outside, dawn began to break. Elias walked to the door and looked at the fields. His crops waved gently in the wind, but his peace was gone. He knew the Queen's army wouldn't stop. They would search every corner of the galaxy, including this valley. His hands tightened on the frame of the door. He could abandon the children now. Leave them in the wild, let someone else find them. It would save his life. But when he turned back, Sarah stirred in her sleep, whispering softly. She called for her mother, tears sliding down her glowing cheeks. Liara stroked her sister's hair, whispering words of comfort. Elias felt his chest twist. He had lost family once before, years ago during a border raid. He knew the sound of children crying for someone who would never come. No, he muttered. I can't do that to them. He slammed the door shut. If soldiers came again, he'd have to think fast. But until then, he had only one mission: keep them alive. Later that morning, Elias cooked a simple meal, bread and roasted roots. Liara sniffed the food curiously, then shared it with her sister. The way Sirius's face lit up at the warm bread made Elias smile despite himself. He thought, they're children, no matter what blood runs in their veins. But the peace didn't last. A low rumble echoed through the valley again. Not ships this time, but land transports. Alien machines rolling across the dirt road. Elias's heart dropped. Patrols. They were searching closer. He moved quickly, hiding the girls in a trap door beneath the floor. His old cellar was cramped and dark, but safe. Stay there, he whispered. Don't make a sound. Liara grabbed his wrist before he could close the hatch. Her golden eyes locked on his, filled with a strange fire. It was trust, but also warning, as if she was saying, if you betray us, we'll know. Elias gave a small nod. I won't. The cellar door shut. Moments later, the patrol stopped outside his cabin. Boots thudded. A new soldier, higher ranked than before, stepped in. His armor was sharper, his voice colder. The queen grows impatient, he said. Her daughters are near. We can smell their blood. If you know something human, tell us now. Elias forced himself to stay calm. "I told your men before. I live alone. Nothing unusual here." The soldier's gaze swept the room, lingering on the floorboards above the cellar. Elias's hand twitched toward his rifle. The soldier leaned close. "If I discover you are lying..." His helmet tilted and the glowing visor met Elias's eyes. "Your death will be slow." Elias clenched his jaw. "Then search. You'll find nothing." The soldier stared at him for a long, tense moment. Finally, he turned and left, signaling his patrol to move on. The sound of their boots faded into the valley. Elias exhaled slowly, sweat dripping down his back. He opened the cellar. The two girls crawled out, shaking but safe. Liara looked at him with something new in her eyes. Respect. Saris hugged his leg, refusing to let go. Elias closed his eyes. He knew then that there was no turning back. The galaxy's most feared queen had lost her daughters, and now he was the only shield they had. Cliffhanger. Far away, the queen swore, "Whoever hides my daughters, human or god, will suffer my wrath." The valley looked peaceful under the morning sun, but Elias knew better. The alien patrol had searched his cabin twice in one night, and the third visit would not be so easy to survive. He leaned against the doorframe, staring at his fields. Once, this land was his world. Planting, harvesting, fixing broken tools, simple problems, simple answers. Now his farm had become a cage, and outside that cage roamed the queen's army, sniffing for her missing daughters. Behind him, soft footsteps padded across the floor. Liara stood there, the elder princess, her golden eyes sharp and steady. She did not look like a child anymore. She looked like a survivor. "You don't understand me," Elias said, "but I'll say it anyway. We can't stay here." Liara tilted her head, then pointed toward the sky. Her finger traced the path of the ship still patrolling above. She knew he was right. Saris, the younger one, sat at the table chewing bread. She was too young to hide her fear. Every loud sound made her flinch. Every shadow made her grab her sister's hand. Elias felt his chest tighten. He remembered when he was small, when soldiers raided his old colony. He had been just as scared. That memory alone made the choice for him. "We're leaving," he whispered. "Before the next patrol comes back." He moved quickly. From the cellar, he pulled out an old travel pack, one he had not touched in years. Inside were rations, water, a battered map, and a short-range scanner. He strapped his rifle across his back, checked the charge, and then turned to the girls. "Stay close," he said firmly, though he knew they didn't understand his words. His tone carried the message. Liara nodded, clutching Saris's hand. Elias led them out the back door into the tall grass of the fields. The stalks swayed above their heads, hiding them from view. He kept low, scanning the skies. The nearest forest lay 2 miles east. If they could reach the cover of the trees, the patrols would have a harder time tracking them. But 2 miles of open land was a dangerous gamble. Halfway through the field, Saris stumbled. Elias caught her before she fell, scooping her into his arms. She was light, almost weightless, but her glowing skin made them a moving beacon. "Stay calm," Elias whispered. "Almost there." Liara pressed ahead, eyes darting left and right, alert like a soldier's daughter should be. Elias realized she had been trained, even at her young age, to read danger. A sudden roar split the sky. A patrol ship. Its searchlight sliced across the field, sweeping closer. Elias dropped flat, pulling the girls down with him. The grass shielded them, but the beam lingered too long. His heart pounded. If the ship detected their heat signatures, they were finished. He pulled the old scanner from his pack and jammed its wires into the dirt. The device whined, sending out a false thermal signal 50 meters away. The searchlight shifted, chasing the decoy. The ship hovered, then blasted off toward the false signal. Elias exhaled, sweat dripping down his face. That was close. Liara looked at him with wide eyes, realizing what he had done. For the first time, she gave a small smile. It was brief, but it told him something. She trusted him now. They reached the forest at last. Shadows wrapped around them, cool and safe. Elias set Saris down and she hugged his leg tightly. "We'll rest here," he muttered. But rest did not come. Through the trees, they heard the distant crackle of fire. Smoke curled into the sky. The Queen's army was burning nearby villages, punishing anyone who might hide the princesses. Elias's fists clenched. He hated himself for not being surprised. This was the Queen's way, rule through fear, through blood. He glanced at the girls who watched the smoke with silent eyes. Their home was fire, their family was an empire of fear, and yet here they were clinging to him. He sat down on a fallen log. "You shouldn't be with me," he admitted softly. "You should be with your mother. But if she rules through terror, then maybe you're safer here." Liara sat beside him. She didn't speak, but she placed her small hand over his. Saris curled up against his side. For the first time in years, Elias felt something stir in his chest. Not duty, not survival. Something older. Something called responsibility. Night fell again. The forest whispered with sounds of strange creatures. Elias built a small fire, careful to keep the smoke hidden. The girls slept close to him, one on each side, their glowing skin dim like starlight under a blanket. He looked at them and shook his head. "You two are going to get me killed." But even as he said it, he felt the truth. He would die for them if he had to. Far above, in her warship, the Queen stared at the star maps. Her spies had tracked faint energy signals near Elias's valley. Her lips curled into a snarl. "Whoever shelters my daughters will learn," she hissed, "that my fury spares no one." Her fleet turned. Her eyes had found the direction of a small, forgotten farm on the edge of the galaxy. Cliffhanger. Elias didn't know it yet, but the fierce queen herself was coming. The forest was alive with whispers. Leaves rustled as night creatures moved through the undergrowth, but Elias knew the sounds that didn't belong. Heavy boots, metallic clinks, the hum of alien scanners. The Queen's hunters were close. Elias crouched by the fire, which he had nearly smothered out, leaving only faint embers. Liara and Saris slept beside him, their glowing skin dim under the blankets. He touched the rifle on his lap, his jaw set. "They've found the forest," he whispered to himself. He wasn't wrong. From the distance came a sudden burst of blue light. Patrol beams slicing through the trees. Soldiers shouted in harsh alien tongue, their voices growing louder. Elias's heart thumped like a drum. He had to move. Staying meant death. He shook Liara gently. Her golden eyes opened instantly, sharp with awareness. He pressed a finger to his lips, then pointed into the shadows. She understood. She nudged Saris awake, keeping her sister quiet. Together they slipped into the deeper woods, their footsteps careful on the damp earth. Elias carried Saris again, while Liara moved close, her small frame tense like a soldier in training. Behind them, the hunters spread through the forest. Their armor glowed faint red, casting eerie shadows on the trees. One raised a scanner, and a cold blue wave spread across the ground, searching for heat. Elias ducked behind a boulder, pulling the girls close. The wave passed, brushing against them. His old scanner buzzed faintly in his pack, trying to mask their heat signatures. He prayed it was enough. The soldier frowned at his screen, cursed, and moved on. Elias exhaled slowly. They had survived the first sweep. But the hunters were not leaving. They were tightening their circle. Hours passed in silence. The night dragged heavy, every second a test of nerves. Elias led the girls to an old hunting shack he remembered from years ago. It was small, half-rotted, but hidden by vines. Inside, the wooden boards creaked, but it was shelter. Elias set Saris down, brushing her hair back as she trembled. Liara stood near the doorway, watching the darkness outside. Elias crouched beside her. "You're strong," he said softly. "Stronger than most adults I've met." She tilted her head at him, not fully understanding, but his tone made her lips twitch into the faintest smile. For a brief moment, it felt almost safe. Then came the sound of metal slicing wood. The shack wall split open as a blade tore through, glowing red-hot. Soldiers poured in, their visors gleaming. Elias reacted on instinct. He shoved Liara and Saris behind him and fired his rifle. The shot cracked through the night, striking one soldier's visor and sending sparks flying. The aliens staggered, but their armor held strong. The others raised their weapons. Red bolts of plasma slammed into the walls, setting the shack ablaze. Elias dived behind a table, pulling the girls with him. "Run when I say," he barked, though he knew they couldn't understand his words. His tone was enough. Smoke filled the shack, fire licking the ceiling. The soldiers advanced, confident in their strength. Elias's hands shook, but his eyes burned with defiance. He fired again, this time aiming at the floor supports. The old wooden beams cracked. The shack collapsed. Dust and smoke exploded as the roof caved in. The soldiers roared in anger, trapped under the falling structure. Elias grabbed the girls and bolted into the forest, running until his lungs burned. Behind them, the hunters clawed free from the rubble. Their leader snarled into a communicator. "The human interferes. He will die slowly." Elias stopped only when his legs gave out. They collapsed near a river, the moonlight shimmering on the water. Saris clung to his chest, sobbing softly. Liara pressed her forehead to his arm, breathing hard but steady. He looked at them both, his chest aching. "You two are trouble," he whispered, voice rough. "But I'm not letting anyone take you." The river's soft current calmed the air, but Elias knew peace wouldn't last. The Queen's hunters would track them again, and each time it would get harder to escape. Liara touched his cheek suddenly. Her glowing markings pulsed brighter as if alive. She whispered a word in her alien tongue, one he didn't know, but he felt its meaning. Protector. Elias froze, the weight of it settling in his chest. He had never been anyone's protector, but now, whether he liked it or not, he was theirs. Far above, aboard her massive flagship, the Queen sat in silence. A scout knelt before her. "My queen," he reported. "We believe a human shelters the princesses. He resists our soldiers." The Queen's golden eyes narrowed. Her lips curled into a cruel smile. "Then this human will learn," she said coldly, "that no one steals from me and lives." Her fleet shifted course. The hunt was no longer for fugitives. Was now a warpath aimed at one man, Cliffhanger. As dawn rose, Elias saw the shadow of a massive warship blotting out the sky. The morning sky should have been blue, but instead, it was swallowed by shadow. A massive warship hovered above the forest, its dark frame blocking the rising sun. The ground shook as engines rumbled, and the air grew heavy with the scent of burning metal. Elias stared upward, his jaw tightening. He had seen patrol ships before, but this was the kind of vessel that destroyed cities. Its cannons glowed faint orange, ready to fire. Beside him, Liara clutched Saris, both girls staring wide-eyed at the sky. Their glowing markings trembled faintly, as if even their blood recognized the presence of their mother. Elias whispered, more to himself than to them. "She's here, the fierce queen." The forest erupted with movement. Dropships descended, dozens of them, carrying soldiers clad in crimson armor. They spread in every direction, sealing off escape routes. Elias pulled the girls deeper into the trees, his heart racing. Running was no longer enough. They had survived patrols, hunters, and ambushes, but against the queen herself, his farm boy tricks and old rifle wouldn't hold. He stopped at the riverbank, staring at his reflection in the rippling water. His life had once been simple, and he had wanted nothing more than peace. Now he was hunted by the deadliest empire in the galaxy, all because two frightened children had curled up on his chest. He gritted his teeth. "If fate gave me this, I'll see it through." Liara tugged his sleeve, pointing toward the cliffs beyond the forest. A faint trail cut upward into the mountains. Elias understood. Higher ground meant a chance to hide, maybe even signal someone. He lifted Saris into his arms, and the three began to climb. The trail was steep, each step scraping stone, but adrenaline pushed them higher. Behind them, the forest glowed as soldiers set fire to the trees, smoke rising like a black storm. Halfway up, Elias paused to catch his breath. His muscles burned, his chest ached. But when he looked at the girls, he kept going. Finally, they reached a ledge overlooking the valley. From here, Elias could see it all. The warship above, the soldiers below, and the smoke curling from the remains of his farm. His past life was gone, burned to ash. Suddenly, a voice cut through the air. Deep, commanding. It echoed across the valley, amplified by alien technology. "Human," the voice thundered. "You shelter what is mine. Return the princesses, and I may grant you a quick death." Elias's blood ran cold. The queen herself was speaking. The girls clung tighter. Saris buried her face in his chest, sobbing. Liara stood rigid, her golden eyes locked on the sky. Elias could see it, conflict burning inside her. Fear, yes, but also something else. Defiance. He looked upward, shouting with every ounce of courage he had. "They're not yours to command tonight. If you want them, you'll have to come through me." His voice echoed weakly against the Queen's ship, but the words were enough to make Liara's lips part in shock. A human, a nobody farmer, had just challenged the most feared ruler in the galaxy. Moments later, the sky split. A beam of light poured down, and within it descended a figure, tall, draped in flowing black armor etched with glowing gold. Her eyes burned brighter than fire, her presence crushing like gravity itself. The fierce queen had arrived. Elias's breath caught. He had seen monsters before, but none like her. Every instinct screamed at him to kneel, to surrender, to run. Instead, he stood his ground, rifle gripped tight. The queen's gaze fell upon the children. Her mask of rage cracked for a heartbeat as her lips trembled. Then her fury doubled. "You dare steal them from me?" She hissed. Elias tightened his grip. "I didn't steal anything. They came to me. They chose me." The queen's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Chosen by royal blood? You are nothing. Dust beneath my boots." Elias stepped forward, shaking but steady. "Maybe. But dust can choke a queen if she's not careful." The queen raised her hand, power swirling in her palm like molten fire. The ground shook as trees cracked and stones split apart. Soldiers in the distance raised their weapons, waiting for her command. Liara suddenly stepped in front of Elias. Her arms spread wide. Her golden markings flared, brighter than ever. "Mother," she shouted in her alien tongue. The word pierced the air. The queen froze. Her fire dimmed slightly, her eyes softening for the briefest second. That hesitation was all Elias needed. He grabbed a stun grenade from his pack, one of the few relics from his colony days, and hurled it into the ground. It exploded in a burst of white light, blinding the soldiers. "Run!" he shouted, scooping Saris into his arms. Liara followed, sprinting beside him. They bolted deeper into the mountains, vanishing into the smoke. Behind them, the queen's roar shook the skies. Her fury was beyond words, beyond reason. "You cannot hide from me, human," she screamed. "I will tear the stars apart to find you." Elias staggered up the rocky path, lungs burning, but his spirit unbroken. For the first time, he had stood face to face with the fierce queen, and survived. Liara looked up at him, eyes glowing with something fierce and new. Respect. Hope. The human farmer had defied her mother, and in her young heart a seed of belief was planted. Maybe humans were not weak. Maybe they were exactly what the galaxy needed. Cliffhanger. The Queen's warship shifted, preparing to unleash destruction upon the mountains. Elias whispered, "We're out of time." The mountains shook as the Queen's warship aimed its cannons. The sky glowed red, the air charged with power ready to destroy everything in sight. Elias stood on the rocky trail, rifle in one hand, Saris clutched in the other. Liara pressed close by his side. He had nowhere left to run. The forest was burning behind them. The cliffs rose too high ahead. Trapped, he whispered to himself, voice shaking but firm. "Then here's where we fight." Liara's golden eyes met his. She understood the meaning without knowing the words. She nodded once, fierce despite her small frame. Zira's trembling buried her face in his chest. Above them, the fierce queen raised her hand. Flames swirled around her, and her voice thundered across the valley. "Last chance, human. Give them back or I will bury you in ashes." Elias shouted back, his voice raw but defiant. "You call yourself their mother, but all they see in you is fear. Children don't curl up on fear, they run from it." The queen's eyes blazed. She extended her arm, ready to unleash destruction. But before the fire could strike, Liara stepped forward. Her glowing markings pulsed brighter than ever, spreading light across her body. She shouted one word in her alien tongue. The mountain echoed it like a drumbeat. "Enough!" The queen froze. For the first time, hesitation cracked her fury. Her daughters had never defied her, not once. Now the eldest stood against her beside a human. Elias seized the moment. He pulled the last device from his pack, a flare beacon from his colony days. It wasn't much, but it could send a signal across the skies. If anyone friendly still roamed this sector, maybe they'd see it. Maybe they'd come. He slammed it against the ground. A burst of blue fire shot into the heavens. The queen snarled. "You think anyone will save you? I am salvation and death in one." She lifted both hands. Fire twisted into a spear of pure destruction aimed at Elias. He didn't move. He stood tall, Saris behind him, Liara gripping his arm. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. Then kill me. But know this. If you burn me, you burn the only shield your daughters have chosen. The spear of fire trembled in the queen's grasp. Her golden eyes flicked between Elias and her children. Saris peeked out from behind Elias, tears glowing on her cheeks. She reached her small hand toward the queen. Mama. The word was broken, half in her alien tongue, half in raw need. The queen's chest heaved. For the first time, her fire dimmed. The spear dissolved into sparks. Elias blinked, stunned. He had expected death. Instead, silence spread across the mountain. The queen floated closer, her armor glinting in the red glow. She landed before them, towering over Elias. Every instinct screamed at him to kneel. But he didn't. She studied him. This fragile human, standing with nothing but an old rifle, had defied her armies, her hunters, and even her own fury. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. Why? Elias swallowed hard. Because they're children. Because no matter what crown you wear, no child should cry the way they cry. And because someone has to stand for them, even if it costs everything. Liara stepped forward, pressing her glowing hand to Elias's. Protect her, she whispered. The queen's lips parted, her anger cracking into something deeper, shame. She had ruled with fire, but in this human her daughters had found something she could not give. Warmth. For a long moment the queen said nothing. Then she turned, raising her hand to the sky. The warship above ceased its glow. The soldiers froze in their march. She looked back at Elias, her voice softer, though still sharp. You have won nothing, human, but you have shown me something I had forgotten. Her eyes burned into him. They will return to me, but I will not harm you, for they have chosen you, and my daughter's choice. I cannot erase. With a wave of her hand, the soldiers retreated. The warship pulled back into the clouds. The mountain grew quiet once more. Elias fell to his knees, exhausted. The girls clung to him, safe for now. He stared at the empty sky, not sure if he had truly survived, or if the queen had only spared him as part of some larger game. But Liara and Saris didn't care. They pressed against him, their small voices whispering comfort. To them, he was more than a stranger. He was their shield, their human. Elias let out a shaky laugh. Well, looks like you're stuck with me a little longer. The dawn finally broke, painting the sky gold. For the first time in years, Elias felt hope stir in his chest. The galaxy was wide, dangerous, and cruel, but he was no longer walking it alone. And far above, in her throne aboard the warship, the queen whispered to herself, This human. Perhaps dust is more dangerous than stone. Ending hook. The galaxy had changed. A farmer had stood against a queen, and two alien princesses had chosen a human's chest as their home.